Welcome to the CTA scenario presentation for universal safety. So we'll start with the company information. So in the given scenario, the company universal safety is distributed across US and Canada. Their primary job is to install monitoring devices onto customer locations. They have certain systems which monitor those devices and generate alerts on which certain actions are taken. They also do maintenance of those devices and have a B2B component to it. There is an involvement of mobile apps and customer community needed for their external users. The key assumptions and risks. So we are assuming the decommissioned parts from the ERP which are removed to SF are not compliance specific. So here we are not doing multi-org basically. Customer data is deduped in the USTs, which are those external systems, and the release in all four regions at once, which is kind of a risk. So as I mentioned, the org strategy is going to be single org, as we don't see any compliance issues or very heavy data volume or performance characteristics which would enforce us to basically do multiple orgs. There is some regulatory requirement, but that can be satisfied with a single org scenario. We have different numbers here, and they have need for expansion up to 5 years, and a 10% increase in data is assumed. So some of the numbers are plotted. We can see like there are a lot of LDB objects which we'll see in the data model. Coming to the licenses, for the system specialists, we are saying sales license because of the need to access opportunity. For support reps, it's service because of need to access omni-channel. Office manager is also sales. The regional and HR managers are also given sales because of the uh, requirement to access opportunity. As far the external users are concerned, the contractors are given customer community license because there is no need for reports, dashboards, or any sales specific objects. Primary customer contacts are given CC plus. That's a typo there because of the need to have delegated admin. Then we have the secondary customer contacts, which are also given CC plus license because of the need to access reports. Going to the roles, we are not using territory management here. The role hierarchy is pretty straightforward. At the very bottom, we have the system specialist, which are distributed or having region specific roles, and they report to their office managers who are also region specific, which in turn report to the regional manager. And finally, they are reporting to the HQ manager. And we have assumed a catch-all role, CEO at the top. The support specialists or support reps are in a separate branch altogether and directly report to the CEO. The system specialist is responsible for owning the roles for the external users or owning the accounts for the external users, which are contractors, primary customer contacts, as well as the secondary customer contact. This brings us to the system landscape. Let me start from the middle out here. So the main products that we are using on the Salesforce side is Sales plus Service Cloud. And within that, we are using omni-channel, Salesforce Voice, multilingual capabilities. On the App Exchange side, we are using Twilio for email, Conga Composer for all document, and as well as for e-signing requirement, which is Conga e-sign. And Xfiles Pro is basically used for the requirement to fetch the design files from the desktop. We are also using TCRM, Tableau CRM for specific reporting needs. At the bottom, we have this ESP as well as an ETL layer. As far as the systems are concerned, external systems are concerned, we are having the monitoring system, which basically monitors those devices, and it is assumed to have a REST API. The ESP is going to orchestrate the communication between the monitoring system as well as Salesforce, and the same is true for ERPs, which are region specific. One is for USA and one is for Canada, and they are primarily responsible for uh, getting data for new orders, and we are also doing an OData for the sales order through the ERP. Again, we are assuming it's having a REST API, and ESP will orchestrate that communication. CRM system is going to get retired, but the ETL would be responsible for cleaning, deduping the data from the CRM system using bulk API to put that inside of Salesforce. There are a lot of LDB objects for this specific scenario, and that's why we are proposing to have a data warehouse, which could be Heroku, and the ETL will make sure that that data gets archived off to the data warehouse. The ETL is also responsible for fetching the data from the network drive. This is basically needed for the requirement where the design files are generated on the system specialist desktop and they need to be migrated. So we're assuming they will be put inside a network drive. The ETL will be responsible for making sure the data is consistent, having a certain format, which could be linked to the record. And then X-Files Pro would be able to link that to specific Salesforce records. There's a firewall in place for better security, and we're using HTTPS JWT. We have certain requirements for Active Directory, and we are proposing to use ADFS because there's a need to have single sign-on with these internal systems as well. And it will use SAML 2.0 to communicate with Salesforce. On the left-hand side, we have two types of users who are using this mobile application. The first is System Specialist Internal User. We are proposing to use SF Mobile. All the requirements could be done using the SF Mobile app, and certain requirements can be customized using LWC. It uses User Agent Flow and OpenID Connect to communicate with Salesforce. On the customer, for the customer contacts, primary as well as secondary, we are planning to use Mobile Publisher to have a better front-ending experience, but the app is Salesforce out of the box app. And similar to the System Specialist mobile app, we will be using customizations through LWC. At the top, we have the public website, which is primarily used to advertise the phone numbers and the offerings of universal safety, as well as that is the place where the leads get created into the system. Then we have two communities. One is for the customers and other is for the contractors. And as we said, like the customers are having CC plus license, the contractors are having CC license. The customer community is going to use OpenID Connect to communicate with Facebook and Twitter for social sign-on. That will be implemented using auth providers. Next, moving to the ERD, we'll basically do the integration later on. In the ERD diagram, we are using leads for the use case where the customers would inquire about certain leads they have, and the leads would get created into the system. The leads get converted into accounts, contacts, and opportunities. Then the system rep will assign this opportunity to a service specialist who would visit the patient, who would visit the customer. At that point of time, we'll be creating a location record. The location record is owned by the service specialist, and it's kind of like an important fulcrum record because on the location record, we are also creating a schedule when there is a need for a schedule, and the opportunity has multiple codes because there's a requirement to have estimates that need to be given by the service specialist to the customer. So there's a lot of back and forth that will happen. So we are using codes for that. The codes are not going to get exposed to the community in order to save licenses, but we're using Chatter to share that information. The location object is also having a link up with the contact, and that's a lookup where we are using a record type, and this is going to be the PA, person account. This is basically used for the contractor lookup. The location is also having a one-to-many relationship with the devices. These devices would be generated whenever the monitoring system receives a connection. Then we are provisioning these devices, and these devices are external objects because there are millions of devices and we don't want to save them inside of Salesforce. Every device can have a case associated with them. Basically, the case is used for multiple reasons. One of them is the issues that are reported by the customer themselves. And certain cases could also be created by the service rep when they receive a call from the customer because of certain issues. So we're using case and multiple record types for these reasons. And we'll see that in more detail in the business scenario. The location is also linked with an order, and then we have order line items which are linked to the price books. So this is basically holding the information when the devices need to be shipped to the particular customer site. So we create an order and order line items around it, and those go to the ERP, and the ERP sales order are brought back into Salesforce through OData, and they are kind of like linked together using this indirect lookup between order and sales order. And similar to this approach, based on the schedule that is set up by the SS, the service specialist, we will be creating work orders, and these work orders are going to be sent to the ERP. And ERP service orders are again brought back into Salesforce through OData. And then we are using indirect lookup between the work order and the service order to satisfy the requirements which are there in the business scenario. So we have multiple LDVs here. As you can see here, it's work order. Then we have the devices, service orders, the cases. So a lot of these LDVs. So we need to manage those LDVs by using some kind of indexes, custom standard indexes, using skinny tables, making sure the list views and reports are having proper filters and do not bring a lot of information inside. We'll look into the other slides later on. Now let's switch to the business scenario. The first requirement we have in the business scenario is for the sales and designs. So prospective customers place a call to the phone numbers and they are directed to the support desk based on the availability. They can submit an information request. For this, we plan to use Salesforce Voice and omni-channel availability based or capacity based routing for the reps. Web to lead is assumed because we are assuming like less than 500 leads to be created, so we're using web to lead. If this is not going to get satisfied, we can use form assembly. The leads will get assigned to a queue, and the service rep is added to the queue based on the location, and they will be able to attend those leads. The support rep pre-qualifies the customer. There's a custom questionnaire in place. Then they schedule a site visit for the system specialist. In order to satisfy this need, we are planning to use a screen flow, which will be invoked by a quick action on the lead itself. After that, the lead will get converted to account, contact, and opportunity. The system specialist is added via default opportunity team. Else it could also be manually added. The visit could be an event on the opportunity record itself. So fourth requirement is during the site visit, the system specialist takes pictures and or videos, creates a preliminary estimate, and captures the GPS information. So the first one, taking pictures and videos. So for this, we are assuming like they will be using files to upload that information, the pictures and videos, to a new location record. The location record will get created by the system specialist once they visit that specific location. The file size is assumed to be less than 100 MB. The preliminary estimate will be using codes for that, and the Conga Composer template would be used. The codes will have certain customized fields in order to put in estimates and the corresponding text. There will be quick action on the opportunity for creating this particular code. There are actions available on the Conga Composer, which basically allow us to define where this particular code will go and in what format. So it's going to go to the email in this case. GPS information for this will basically have quick action on the location record. We'll invoke the geolocation API inside an LWC, and we'll save the lat and longitude on the location record itself in a specific field. It allows us to do location-based queries if needed in the future. The creation of an estimate activates a process, view the estimate and collaborate with the system specialist. The customers can do that. So for this, we are assuming that the customer will be converted to the community. This could be done via trigger once the estimate is created, that is the quote is created. For this, we will be enabling the customer, the contact as a customer, and the profile will get assigned. Whatever profile we have created, the login credentials will get sent to the customer. When the customer lands on the community, they can view the estimate as an attachment to the location, avoiding the quote and opportunity. So we will not be exposing these objects to save licenses. The collaboration can be done with the chatter either on the account or on the location record itself. Back at the office, the SS creates design plans with custom design tool. They are up to 100 MB in size and they should be accessible by the customer from within Salesforce. So in this case, we are assuming that we would be having a process in place where we tell the specialists to upload these documents directly to Salesforce. We won't use any kind of automation for that. They should be able to attach this document directly to the location record. And the way we are going to do it is through Xfiles Pro. Xfiles Pro has an LWC component that can be enabled on any object, in this case, the location record. Once they use the LWC component to upload these files will automatically get saved to the network drive that we have mentioned as part of the data migration. This is because of this huge data volume, the file storage, which is there, which is in terabytes, and it's way above the current storage that is available to us. Once the documents are created, the system specialist notifies the customer to access them. The customer digitally signs an updated estimate to proceed with the installation. So again, this communication will happen through chatter on the location object or on the account, preferably on the location object. The updated estimate is again attached inside the chatter feed, and we could have a link because we can use either DocuSign or Conga sign, and all of those have the ability to put the link to the document within the chatter itself. Once the customer hits that link, they will be taken to a web page where they can do an e-signature. The customer provides financial data, which is recorded on the location record. Approval process with the local manager and regional manager might get involved if the cost is high enough. So finance data is recorded in a new finance object because of sharing needs that will cover. There will be an Apex trigger on creation of finance record that would cause the custom approval flow to get triggered. It's a multi-step process. The managers are selected based on location. So this mapping needs to be placed somewhere, could be in custom metadata. Customers should be able to use their Facebook, Twitter, log, or LinkedIn credentials. So for this, we're proposing to use social sign-on that needs to be configured auth providers and OpenID Connect Flow. Next, contracting and installation. Contractor records created or updated in ERP should be sent to Salesforce daily. So for this, we will be looking at our first major integration. And let's go to the integration slide for that. So the integration is I001. In this case, we are trying to integrate between Salesforce and the ERP. Okay, let me just make it a bit bigger. Right, so the source and destination is between ERP, ESP, and Salesforce. The function is to send new contractors. For this, we are using batch sync, and it's also a remote colon. Security HTTPS JWT. The way it's going to work is that there will be a cron job on the ESP. It will check and pull the contractors from the ERP since the last watermark, and it will basically insert it into SF via REST API call. New contractors should be automatically provisioned for access to Salesforce. So for this, we will be having a trigger on the creation of a contractor record. So the moment these contractors are getting pulled into Salesforce, we'll have a trigger in place. It will enable those contacts as customers. A profile will be assigned, and then the login credits will be sent to the contractors for logging into Salesforce. The system specialist selects the contractor. Customer design documents, estimates, photos, and videos are automatically made available to the contractor. For this, we'll have a quick action on location to associate the system specialist with the location record, and we have that in the data model itself. This link, which is there. The sharing set location.contact is equal to user.contact. Location.contact is equal to user.contact will provide access to this particular contractor to the location record and via master digital implicit relationships at certain places to other records as well. The contractor reviews the customer documents and collaborates with the system specialist. The system specialist revises the document and repeats the customer approval process. So again, for this, we'll be using the chatter on the location object. They could do add mentions so that they grab the customer's attention. Another code would be created if they want to revise that particular estimate, and the document will get posted on chatter with message for customer to e-sign if everything is fine. The information will eventually get captured in the code object at a backend. So we'll basically have a history of code objects, multiple code objects basically representing the back and forth of the estimate between universal safety and customer. Fourth one, the contractor indicates the acceptance in Salesforce. At this point, the system automatically generates a contracting agreement for the contractor to sign online. So here we'll have a quick action on the location to take acceptance. So once they click that, a flow will be triggered and it will basically trigger Conga to show the agreement within Salesforce itself. And then we'll have Conga e-sign come into the picture to acquire the contractor's signature, which will get stored. The system specialist is notified of the contractor's acceptance and signature. Again, we'll have the same flow, post a chatter message, or we could also have a custom notification generated with the target as the SS. The system specialist can do final review and place the order for the required devices, materials, and supplies. So for this need, we are planning to use the order line item, and product price book and price book entries as depicted here. And those are linked to this particular location. So we know that this order is linked or is part of this particular location. The order created in Salesforce order is flagged as complete, sends the order information to the appropriate ERP system. So here we'll have an integration that will be triggered once the status changes on the order object. And for that we'll use integration I002, which is between Salesforce and ERP through the ESP again. The function is to send the orders which are created in Salesforce to ERP. Here we are using fire and forget and remote call-in. So the process starts with a status change on the order that triggers a flow. The flow publishes a platform event. The SP subscribes to it and acts on it. It checks the location, and based on the location, which is part of this platform event, it invokes the correct ERP, the two ERPs, USA and Canada. The ERP then internally will create a sales order object. The ESP will get the sales order object's external ID, and it can store that on the order itself. And we can have an OData connection that virtualizes the sales order, which is an ERP, and backlink it to the Salesforce to an indirect lookup relationship. Detailed order data in the ERP system should be viewable or accessible from within the Salesforce. So here that's where we plan to use data virtualization via OData on the sales order, the ERP sales order. It's brought back into Salesforce, and there is a indirect lookup relationship between order and sales using the external ID of the order object. Sales order will be accessible by a related list on the order object. The ERP system updates the order status in Salesforce through the point of arrival at a customer location. So for this, we will be using this integration between ERP and SF, order status update, remote call-in, and fire and forget is used. Here we are assuming that the ERP can invoke the ESP and it will pass the order status change request. The order status will have an order ID. ESP will publish that in a platform event. There will be a process builder listening to this platform event. It will invoke an invocable Apex method that will take this order ID and it will query the order through the SOQL and update it with correct status. Number 7, once the order arrives, the system specialist and contractor should be notified by SMS and email. Now, it's part of I003. Once this invocable Apex method is getting executed, this method will find the SSN contractor via the location object. So one is the owner of this is SS, and the lookup relationship allows us to find a contractor. Then we'll basically use Twilio to send SMS message, and we can use native Salesforce email capability, defining an email template and sending the email through SF. If those emails we find are less than 5,000 per day, if that number is getting breached, then we need to use an external email client. We can use Twilio for that or some other app exchange package. Or we might eventually bring in my marketing cloud as well. Such requirements are needed in the future. Number 8, during installation, each device is added to the customer installation and is connected online to the appropriate UST monitoring system. This process should automatically create a record in Salesforce for the device associated with the customer location. For this, we use I004 integration. It's between the UST and SF through the ESP. For this, the main function is to create the devices within Salesforce, or at least have them available in Salesforce. The pattern here we are planning to use is OData, and essentially the devices are created in the UST monitoring system, and we've data virtualize those and bring into Salesforce using indirect relationship between location and the device. As we can see in indirect lookup relationship between location and device, we'll be able to associate these devices to the location. Number 9, once installation is final, Salesforce is updated by the system specialist and final information from the installation is sent to the ERP for the creation of an invoice. So for this we are using integration 05, which is between Salesforce and ERP for invoice generation. It's fire and forget. Once the status changes on the order, maybe it says something like completed, we'll have a flow invoke which will publish a platform event. The ESP will listen to that event and then it will invoke the ERP, passing the order ID. The ERP will take the order ID and based on that it will create an invoice. There are no needs for bringing the invoice back into Salesforce. So this is kind of like related to the ERP. The location can tell the ESP which specific ERP should be invoked, like we have seen before. The next group of requirements is around scheduled maintenance. The maintenance schedule is set by the system specialist. On average, each customer location is serviced twice a year. The schedule information we are kind of like modeling in the form of a maintenance object, which is linked to the location record. As you can see here, it's in a master data relationship with location as the master, and information is in schedule. When the maintenance is 1 week away, create a service order in the appropriate ERP system. Now for this, we will be running a batch Apex which will run nightly. It will check every location and gets its maintenance schedule. If it finds that a maintenance schedule is just 1 week away, it will create a work order in Salesforce linked to that particular location. And that would trigger the integration 06. The integration 06 is between Salesforce and ERP for creating a service order on the ERP side. For this, we are planning to use fire and forget. Basically, the work order creation in Salesforce will trigger a flow that will publish a platform event. ESP subscribes, extracts the data from the platform event, and sends it to the ERP via REST API. And ERPs would then create that specific order. The scheduled maintenance is complete. The system specialist updates Salesforce on their mobile device, and the status of the ERP order is updated on a real-time basis. So here the work order is what the specialist will work on in order to perform maintenance at that particular location. Once the work order status changes or it's updated, we'll basically have the same integration that we saw in 06 coming to the force in order to update the service order status. Next, monitoring and issue management. So here UST would like Salesforce to be updated when certain events are raised in the monitoring system. These events should also create a task. So for this, we plan to use I007 integration. So in this, the integration is between UST, those monitoring systems, and Salesforce via the ESP. And the plan is to basically send alerts within Salesforce. So for this, we are planning to use the remote call in and fire and forget. So UST would make a REST API call to ESP. ESP will publish a platform event. A process builder in Salesforce listens to this event, invokes a flow, and that will create a case record. And the case record is created against the device and the location. So we have the case record against the device, and we also have it linked to the location. I've not shown I've not shown this uh, link here, but it will be linked to location as well. So we are able to find out which cases are against which locations. So after this integration is done, the cases are created. The case record will be assigned to a queue on which we have these different support reps. They could be organized by region, and we are having a different record type because the case can be used for multiple reasons. And one of the reasons is customer contacts raising those cases. So customer contacts can log into Salesforce on the web or their mobile phones and submit issue to UST. So for this, we are using Mobile Publisher, standard Salesforce mobile app, slightly branded for the front-ending customers. They can create case from here, and then it will follow the same queues and assignments, and eventually go to the service rep. USD devices installed are fitted with barcodes, picture of the barcode to identify an individual device. If there is a problem with it associated with an issue. So for the barcode requirement, we plan to use LWC component. The LWC API has a barcode API, a barcode scanning API. Once we use that API, it basically gives us the actual ID of the device. That ID of the device can be used to create a case and link it back to the device and location as we saw in the previous use case. Issues submitted in this way should be routed to the appropriate service rep based on geography and expertise. So for this, we plan to use omnichannel skill-based routing. The reps will have certain skills. They will be assigned to certain queues, and omnichannel will take care of those requests. Support reps creates a maintenance task, which in turn creates a service order in the ERP. The ERP integration should provide immediate feedback on success or failure to the user. So for this requirement, we'll have a quick action on case. So if the case suggests that some maintenance or repair work is needed, we'll be creating a work order. And a work order will be created against a device. It will be linked to the case, which is not shown here, but it will be linked to the case and to the location. So we have that view that for which device and location case this is created. And then we will be invoking integration I008. The integration I008 is between Salesforce and the ERP. That's for creating the work order. It's similar to I006, where we are using a flow platform event and ESP is pushing that information to ERP to create a service order on the ERP side. Issues created by the support reps. So in this case, they can be created manually. The cases can be created manually by the support rep. On average, each customer location will produce 20 issues per year. Half will require work orders. So this is probably a very huge data volume. It's an LTV. So we would need data archivals for cases and work orders as needed. If we just look at the volumes of the issues that can be created on a 5-year timeline is around like 6 million. And the work orders are probably half of it, which is like 3 million. So we may want to use data archival regularly to archive our old data. Data migration requirements. Customer leads from the existing CRM system for the last 5 years should be migrated to Salesforce, except when they are also in the ERP. So for this, we want to use a specialized dedicated ETL tool which has the necessary connectors and capabilities for doing this operation. Here we will have the ETL doing a dedupe matching the CRM and the ERP systems, whether the same record exists in both of them. And if it doesn't exist, then we'll have the lead object being created on Salesforce through a bulk API integration. There will be connectors in place to connect to the CRM system as well as to the ERP system. All customer locations and contact data from the ERP needs to be replicated into SF, and UST needs to logically link records between the two systems. So here we want to do ETL migration on account, contact, location, and the order is in the same format. Lead, account, contact, location, orders, and basically have external IDs created on the records in Salesforce. The external IDs would be the unique record IDs in the southbound systems from which we are doing the migration. Last 3 years of sales order and service order data from ERP needs to be replicated into Salesforce. And UST needs to logically link records between two systems. This we are supporting through data migration, the service order and um, work orders, the service orders and the sales order, which is there. That's actually not getting migrated into Salesforce. But what we plan to do is use data virtualization through OData and having indirect relationship between order and sales order, and between work order, which is in Salesforce, and a service order in the ERP. That would help us meet this requirement. Number three, all devices from the three monitoring systems need to be replicated into Salesforce, and UST needs to be able to logically link records between the two systems. Some customers have device data in more than one monitoring system. So we again plan to use data virtualization. The devices are data virtualized through data through ESP, because we are assuming like we can see around like 10 million records per year, which is extremely huge. The devices are linked with customer ID on the USD side, and that's how we might be able to do some dedupe operations whenever the device data is more than one monitoring system. The ESP can virtualize this view. We have the logic in place to dedupe it. All design documents currently residing on the desktops for all open orders need to be available to the Salesforce. So here what we're trying to say is that ETL will read all these documents. Basically, we'll tell the support specialist to put all their old documents into a shared network drive location. The ETL will then read from that, and it would convert it into a custom file name format. Maybe we might have to use tools like RPA or scanning the first page, which may have that information about a customer. And then using that, we can change the file name of that particular design file so that it contains the customer ID or customer name or some unique identifier about the customer. And we can put that in another location on the same network drive or change it in place itself. Once that is done, the X-Files Pro will be able to connect to this network location, and then using that same file name, we'll be able to surface that information onto that specific record, which we migrated as part of step 1 and step 2, which are the locations or accounts. Visibility and accessibility requirement. System specialists should be able to view and edit all customer and install systems data for their own customers. So the system specialist is added on the account as part of the account team, and we can have, they are basically the owners of location. They are responsible for creating a location. That's how they have the access on the location. And then we have master detailed relationships from locations onto few objects like schedule, and we can also have criteria based sharing on some other objects which are linked to location which are not in master detail that will provide them access. System specialist should be able to view all customer and install system data for other specialist customers within their local office, except for customers' financial data. So here we can use ownership based sharing because the roles will be based on that specific locality or region. So we could use ownership based sharing, own records of this role with this particular role. And the finance object is a separate object which is linked to the location. We're not putting that information in location, and it will not be shared with the above people through ownership based sharing. So only the owner of that object would be able to see this information, and in this case it's going to be the system specialist itself. All managers should be able to view and edit all customer and install system data within their respective areas. So again, this can be met by two ways. One is through the role hierarchy because we have the support specialist reporting to local manager and so on, and we have this ownership based sharing, so it basically rolls up. And for the financial data, we will be having a separate rule that would share it with the managers based on the location. Contractors should be able to view and edit data only for customer locations to which they have been assigned, except for financial data to which they do not have access. So we have a sharing set on the location record. So we have location and contact relationship. So they have access to the location. Location is linked to master data by master data to certain objects like schedule. So they will be able to access schedule as well as the order if they want to see it. And whenever the finance data access is needed, they will not have access because we would, first of all, location and finance are in a lookup relationship. So they don't have access to it, and we will not grant them access to this finance data. It could also be controlled at the profile level if finance data is not needed at all. Customer contact should be able to view and edit only their own customer contact and install system data. So again, we will have sharing set on the location. So location.account is user.account. So all the customer contacts, primary and secondary on this account will have access to location again through master detail to other records. And wherever that is not possible, we'll have to use LWC to expose that information to these users as they're using customer community. Certain customers with multiple customer accounts and locations set up in an account hierarchy. For these customers, primary customer contact should be able to see all locations, subordinate data across all related accounts. So here we are planning to use external account hierarchy. The topmost role in each of these accounts will have access to all the information that is accessible to the users in the child accounts. The only side effect of this would be that the support specialist will not have access to the child accounts as their owners will change. So we'll need to make sure that once this external account hierarchy is built, we provide access to the support specialist through some sharing rules through Epic sharing. Support reps should be able to see all data within their geography only, except for customer financial data. So support reps are on a separate branch, region specific branch, and we'll basically provide them ownership based access, and on their profile we'll turn off the access to the finance object. Coming to the reporting requirements, support reps should be able to run reports on sales activity and schedules for all customers they have access to. So here we can do this by a Salesforce summary report on lead, opportunity, and schedule. Support reps, specialist managers should be able to run reports showing number of device monitoring events for all customers they have access to. So in this case, the data is on the device and the cases associated with them. These are LDB objects. Many of them would be archived. So we plan to use TCRM to build these reports. Managers should be doing ad hoc trending reports based on different parameters. So here also we plan to use TCRM because the amount of data could be huge and the computation could be complex. Customer contact should be able to run reports showing issues and their status for all the issues they have access to. So for this, we need to build a report on cases, and that's why we want to give them customer community plus license. UST would like to report that can run live on public website. So for this, we can have TRM dashboard that is created that shows this public facing report or whatever data is needed in a fancy manner. And the same dashboard can be exposed while lightning out on the public HTML JS page. Project and development requirements. So we have different environments like dev, CI, QA, UAT, stage, prod, and hotfix, and different instances around it like partial, full copy, sandbox. So the first need here is that the solution needs to support both English and French languages. For this, we plan to use multilingual capabilities using translation workbench, labels, as well as anything. If we are using communities, we could use the community language switcher. UST has geographically separate IT teams responsible for the 2 and 3 monitoring systems. The ERP teams in particular have autonomy. So here we have multiple teams and teams are autonomous. So we need to basically have coordination meetings, stand up center of excellence that provides guidelines on how things should be done. IT team have access to only one development and one test environment for each of the respective systems. So this can be managed by having a very good environment strategy like we have here. The sales management team at USC would like to simultaneously release the completed solution to production for all regions in 4 months. This is definitely a risk, and the risk needs to be mitigated by ensuring that there is a MVP defined. We'll need to involve the champions to understand that there is a risk and it should be mitigated by reducing the scope or considering and or tight bounding the scope. UST would like to recommendation on how to manage the project to address project priorities, technical design issues, team management, and organizational issues that may arise. For this, we would like to have COE in place. The COE will have an architect review board, design authority, which provides technical guidance. At the same time, the functional aspects of the COE provides planning, change management, insights, and overall project plan for execution. With this, we have come to the conclusion of this presentation for universal safety. Thank you for giving me the time, and I look forward to your questions.